American Comics, opening sign in Accelerator. Chapter 26 Signing into Lauren. Molecular condensation. Ding. Did the host check in with Mutant Lauren? Yes. Ding. The sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability condensed molecules, with 100 experience points. Levi's couldn't help wrinkling when he heard the system prompt. Was it just condensing molecules, not molecular manipulation? The gap between the two is really too big. Simple condensed molecules, just like Lauren, can condense water molecules in the atmosphere to form a shield, or condense water molecules as sharp blades. In the original book, it is also possible to close the portal that Clarisse unwittingly opened. Although this kind of ability is good, it is still far from the energy of the Strucker twins. Maybe also sign in to get Andrew's molecular sabotage. Levi's eyes lit up at the thought. The Strucker twins can release the strongest power only when they work together. They can destroy all the molecular structures around them in an instant, and vice versa. They can also create molecular structures in an instant. For example, you can destroy the molecular structure of a villa in an instant, causing the entire villa to collapse, or you can create a villa in an instant. Definitely, maybe it's harder to create for destruction, but that's the real level for mutant. They can only be regarded as second-level mutants when they are taken out alone. After thinking about this, he was not in a hurry. It was at this time. Boom! Exclamation mark. The Coke bottle placed on the table actually burst open, and the Coke inside was scattered in an instant. Obviously Andrew failed. However, the amazing thing is that all the Cokes just floated in the air and didn't spill. The next moment, all the Cokes were gathered together and poured into the cup. You did it? Lauren froze for a moment, then looked at Levi's in astonishment. As for Andrew, still in a daze, he can't control his ability now. Being able to control molecules is an amazing ability. It's not just about manipulating the flow of water, like this. Levi's said that he directly manipulated the cola in the glass to form ice cubes, and a glass of ice cola was born. Vice. Do you have the same ability as us? Lauren looked at him in surprise. She thought that only she and her brother had the same ability, but she didn't expect Levi's to have the same ability. That's right. Levi's nodded with a smile. Then can you teach us to use ability? Lauren hurriedly asked. This. No problem. He readily agreed. In fact, he also has a lot of ways to use manipulators. Maybe he can talk about it for everyone to discuss. Lauren was very happy when he saw his promise. Then let me talk about how I use control molecules. You must know that everything in the world is composed of molecular structures, which means that we can create everything. If it is possible to perfectly manipulate any molecule, it is directly indistinguishable from God. For example, the carbohydrates required by the human body are also called carbohydrates, and the molecular formula is C24H42O21. Which means that the carbohydrates required by humans can be created according to this molecular formula. If you can fully create all the elements that the human body needs, then you can create a body out of thin air. Even the creation of blood or protein alone can be a doctor and treat patients. In short, there are so many things that manipulators can do. Lauren just felt like a door to a new world had opened up. Before, she only thought about simply condensing water molecules, but she never thought that manipulating molecules could do these incredible things. She really admires Levi's. As for Andrew on the side, he looked confused. As a scumbag, it was difficult for him to understand what he said. In fact, let alone Andrew, what Levi said just now. In fact, even he himself is not very clear. He did not understand the specific molecular composition of the human body. If he really wanted to tell him everything in detail, he would be blind. So seeing that the flickering was almost over, Levi's also ran away. As soon as I came out, I didn't expect to encounter Thunderbird. Thunderbird hurriedly came to him and said, "It's not good. One of our strongholds was discovered by the Sentry Secret Service. Don't worry, speak slowly." Levi's frowned upon hearing the news. He said why the Sentry Secret Service had not moved for so many days. It turned out to be looking for the stronghold of the underground organization. The Garland detention facility had lost so much face last time, there was no reason for the Sentry Secret Service to swallow it like that. Dr. Campbell's hatred of Mutant is unlikely to keep him from doing nothing. It's like this, Thunderbird slowly said the matter. It turned out that just now, a stronghold on the surface of their organization was suddenly attacked. The person who attacked them was the mutant who was transformed by Dr. Campbell. That is, the two demolition team duos in the original book. One has the super ability to move objects, and the other has the super ability to control gravity. With Dr. Campbell's transformation, the two were able to unleash shockwave-type attacks. The entire stronghold was destroyed as a result. Now the head of the stronghold, Evangeline, and several other mutants are evading Sentry's Secret Service. Chapter 27 This is my railgun. Thunderbird almost forgot about Dr. Campbell, not to mention Levi's. Maybe you don't know him by this name, but when you know what he did, everyone will understand. Because Dr. Campbell is the initiator of the Hound Project. The Hound Project is also the plan to eradicate Mutant. Remember Sentinel from X-Men, Days of Future Past? Yes, These Sentinels are the work of Dr. Campbell. It is because of this plan that countless Marvel parallel universes have been destroyed. Levi's didn't know which parallel world he was in, but he would never allow this world to be destroyed by Sentinel. Fortunately, the Hound project has just begun, and everything is still too late. It's not too late. We're going to save people now. Without saying a word, Levi's directly grabbed the Thunderbird and teleported to an alley. This was where he and Polaris had been last time, so using the space move was an instant. Where are the Thunderbirds currently? When he got here, he didn't know where to go. Over there. Thunderbird was very familiar with this place, and following the place he pointed, Levi's directly led him to the roof of the building and kept teleporting. Everything he could see was within his teleportation range. In just a moment, the two had already found Evangeline and the others who were hiding. At the moment, Evangeline and the others were really careful to avoid the pursuit of the Sentry Secret Service. The two suddenly appeared in front of them, and they jumped a few times. Evangeline turned her hands into dragon claws and almost started. But fortunately she withdrew her force in time. You are finally here. After seeing the Thunderbird, Evangeline finally breathed a sigh of relief. Evangeline is a strong woman, and almost all the expenses of the Mutant Underground organization are given to her to support, so that she can help when she is found out as a mutant. Don't worry, you won't be in any danger when I come. Levi's smiled confidently. This is Levi's. Evangeline looked at him, and she was also a little curious about this young man who brought changes to the underground organization. It's just that I've been busy with work recently, so I haven't returned to Mutants Underground headquarters. Yes, hello Miss Evangeline. Levi said hello with a smile. He was still very interested in this super ability that could turn his hands into dragon claws. And it is certain that Evangeline's ability is definitely not as simple as changing dragon claws. It's even possible to actually transform into a dragon. Let's leave quickly. I'm afraid the Sentry Secret Service will catch up soon. This time they brought a lot of weapons against Mutant, so it's not appropriate to conflict with them. Evangeline frowned. Well then, Thunderbird just agreed, but did not expect that the Sentry Secret Service had found everyone in the alley. I saw that the demolition duo had raised their hands to aim at them, and an invisible shockwave suddenly swept in, and the walls on both sides of the alley cracked instantly. Be careful, Thunderbird only had time to shout. Evangeline reacted very quickly, seeing that her hands quickly turned into red dragon claws, as if she was going to resist. However, Levi's reacted faster than them, and saw him appear in front of the crowd in a flash. Boom! Exclamation mark. The next moment a mighty shockwave swept in with slow rubble and smoke. When the smoke cleared, Thunderbird and Evangeline found that Levi's was standing in their way. Fortunately, Vice, you're here, otherwise I'm afraid we'll be finished. Thunderbird sighed in relief. Evangeline looked at him standing in front of her in surprise. She didn't seem to expect his reaction to be so fast, and she took the opponent's ability attack unscathed. Have you brought any coins with you, Thunderbird? Levi's then turned to look at Thunderbird and asked. Coins? Thunderbird looked confused. I have it here. Evangeline didn't ask the reason, she took out a coin and handed it over without hesitation. Thanks. Levi's took the coin and tossed it. The file size was just right. By the way, have you ever seen a railgun? Electromagnetic gun? Thunderbird and Evangeline suddenly looked at each other, not understanding why he said this. It's not an electromagnetic gun, it's a super tilde electromagnetic gun. Levi deliberately corrected Thunderbird's words. Ding! Exclamation mark. With a crisp sound, the coin bounced high. Immediately afterwards, there were traces of electric arcs around Levi's, and a powerful energy made his hair and clothes flutter. Just let you geese see my railgun. Levi's raised one hand, the electromagnetic force concentrated in his hand, and when the coin fell, he used his arm as a track, and flexed his fingers to eject the coin. Boom! Exclamation mark. In an instant, an orange light that was even brighter than the sun shot out. The light of your fingertips is my only constant belief! Exclamation mark. There should be BGM here. In the eyes of Thunderbird, Evangeline and the others behind them, where the orange light on the fingertips passed, the earth cracked instantly. In an instant, the orange light shot directly into the sky, and it took a long time to disappear. Thunderbird and Evangeline were so shocked that they were speechless, and the moment when the railgun was fired was too shocking. I'm afraid they will never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Looking at the Sentry Secret Service on the opposite side, I saw that the demolition duo were still standing there in a daze, while the sentry behind them all collapsed to the ground in horror. The railgun just now was so close to them that it almost scared them into peeing. If that beam were any lower, I'm afraid they would all die. Levi's didn't intend to kill them though, so his railgun wasn't aimed at anyone at all. Looking from a distance, I saw that an abandoned building behind them had a hole pierced. Fortunately, it was an abandoned building, otherwise there would be injured people. Chapter 28 Use of Electromagnetic Waves. Start being a hacker today. Okay, let's go. Seeing that all the people in Sentry's Secret Service were dumbfounded, Levi snapped his fingers and turned to leave. Because of the shocking blow just now, the people from the Sentry Secret Service did not dare to continue the pursuit. After returning to the underground headquarters, Thunderbird, Evangeline and others were still immersed in the shock of gang and couldn't extricate themselves. After everyone's inquiries, it took a while for them to recover. "Mr. Vice, thank you this time." Evangeline came to Levi's and thanked him again. "I also want to thank you for the coins." Levi smiled. Evangeline kept looking at him, only to feel that the man in front of him was too mysterious. Super electromagnetic gun. Polaris on the side was stunned when he heard the name from Thunderbird and the others, looking thoughtful. She inherited the ability of her father Magneto, and it is reasonable to say that it is also the control of electromagnetic force. Magneto's ability is electromagnetic force, by query. But she usually only uses it to manipulate the magnetic force to control the steel. Although I have never seen a railgun, compared to it, manipulating steel is simply too fishy. The two are not the same grade at all. There is a sense of aristocracy and commoners, and the railgun is that aristocrat. The same way of manipulating electromagnetic force, Misaka Mikoto's usage is much more scientific. Poor Magneto can only use magnetism and not electricity. The use of ability between the two is too much. Even with magnetism, Misaka Mikoto played better than Magneto. For example, Misaka Mikoto can control the iron sand and vibrate at high speed into a storm that turns into an assassination needle. If Magneto has Misaka Mikoto's iron sand sword ability, slashing Sentinel would be a breeze. Definitely, Magneto also has his strengths. His powerful magnetism is unmatched, and he can easily grab planes, steel bridges and even entire gymnasiums. This is something Misaka Mikoto can't do. "Vice, can you show me your super railgun?" Levi's took over. "Yeah, that's the one." Polaris nodded. "That's fine, but this isn't the place to use ability." "Then next time, if you have a chance, be sure to let me see it." "Definitely no problem." Levi's nodded happily. This small request can still be agreed. Then the Thunderbird came over. "Vice, what are we going to do next?" The Sentry Secret Service obviously won't let them go like this. This time they just found a stronghold. What if they find their headquarters next time? "Leave this to me, I already have a plan." Levi smiled mysteriously. As early as when he came back just now, he had already thought of a way to deal with Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell is the initiator of the Sentry Project. If he is not dealt with, the whole world may be destroyed by Sentinel. But if you kill Dr. Campbell like this, who knows if there will be another Dr. Campbell. So the best solution is to use mind control to completely control Dr. Campbell. Once Dr. Campbell is completely under control, he can even be turned around to study how to make ordinary people awakening's genes. At that time, most of the ordinary people in the whole world will become mutants. Then the contradiction between mutants and ordinary people will be self-defeating. In a society full of ordinary people, mutants are outliers, and vice versa, where mutants are in the majority, ordinary people become outliers. Thunderbird was relieved to hear his words. The next day, it was soon evening. During the day, Levi's made a check-in. Definitely, the sign-in was not aimed at Andrew, who was also capable of manipulating molecules. It's Black Harry. Harry has the ability to make himself and other objects invisible, and this ability is crucial to Levi's next actions. At the same time he also obtained information about Dr. Campbell. This information did not come through the X-Men. Misaka Mikoto can hack into computers directly without cables, and can hack electronic devices directly through electrical signals or electronic operations, and even destroy electronic devices through communication lines. Levi's is confident that the same can be done. Sure enough, after trying it during the day, he easily learned this trick. It can be said that at the moment he has become a hacker who surpassed the world's technology for decades. After all, Academy City, which has been leading the world for decades, could not stop Misaka Mikoto's invasion. What's more, this is a relatively backward world of Marvel. It is no exaggeration to say that Levi's can easily invade the ugly Pentagon. Ugly beautiful. Even control Tony Stark's steel battlesuit with ease. Not even the artificial intelligence JARVIS can stop him. After getting everything ready, Levi's said goodbye to the likes of Thunderbirds and Polaris. Went to the institute where Dr. Campbell was working alone. Using the invisibility ability he just signed in, he easily found Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell. The sound that burst into the laboratory made Dr. Campbell, who was doing research, pause for a moment. He raised his head and looked at the stranger who suddenly appeared in front of him, and quietly stretched out his hand to press the alarm beside him. Levi's chuckled and said, "If I were you, I wouldn't press that button." Sure enough, Dr. Campbell stopped what he was doing. Definitely, at this time because Dr. Campbell was given psychological cues by him, so that he would not touch the alarm. Chapter 29 Sign-in Molecular Manipulation. Consider being a god. Are you the mutant who broke into the Garland Detention Center? Although Levi's was wearing a mask the last time he broke into Garland's detention center, Dr. Campbell guessed his true identity based only on his size and hair color. "Yes, it seems that you have investigated me." Levi's laughed. "How on earth did you get in?" "This question is boring. Why don't you ask me what I want to do here?" Dr. Campbell frowned upon hearing his words. "What are you trying to do? Are you trying to kill me? Because I sent someone to attack your mutant stronghold." No. Levi's shook his head and smiled. "Although you sent someone to attack our stronghold and made me very angry, it's true, But I didn't come here to kill you. Not killing me? What's that for? Definitely make you my servant. Servant? Dr. Campbell's face changed greatly when he heard this, and he had already guessed what the man in front of him would do to him. He suddenly wanted to press the alarm, but it was too late. Levi's mental power had invaded his mind in an instant, and then he modified some of Dr. Campbell's memories. Let him still maintain his hatred of Mutant, but the direction of the research has changed, and it has become the research on the awakening gene of human beings all over the world. In fact, everyone has the X gene in their body, but the X gene of most people is hidden very deep. In general, awakening can't be done at all. For example, the mission set by Dr. Campbell for Sentinel is to kill mutants all over the world, but every ordinary person also has the X gene in his body. Therefore, ordinary humans are also targeted by Sentinel as a target to be cleaned up, and it is this way that the entire world will be destroyed. Therefore, it is completely feasible to develop the awakening gene that allows ordinary people to have no side effects. And with Dr. Campbell researching Sentinel's ability, Levi's believes he can do it. Quietly controlled Dr. Campbell, he did not stay much, and used the space to move back to the headquarters of the Mutant Underground Organization. How is it resolved? Seeing him come back, everyone is very concerned about this matter. Don't worry if I go out. Levi smiled and nodded. Everyone was relieved to hear this, and everyone still believed in his ability. Dr. Campbell won't bother you anymore. Definitely, it's hard to say if someone else takes over the Sentry Secret Service. Dr. Campbell is not the only one who opposes Mutant in the world. For example, Professor Stryker also hates Mutant. There are many such people, so they can't take it lightly. If Dr. Campbell stopped working on Sentinel, maybe someone else would take over the project. Understood. In short, we can't relax now. Thunderbird nodded seriously. After resolving the matter of Dr. Campbell, next, Levi's began to seriously study some physical knowledge such as molecular structure and electromagnetic force. Although he does not need computing power to use ability, it is more like a rough stone, but mastering this knowledge can better develop and use his own ability. In the past few days, only study is study, even if Polaris or Claris invited him to go shopping. In addition, Levi's also checked in Andrew and Evangeline respectively. Surprisingly, the check-in for Andrew failed once, and it was not successful until the second check-in. This was also the first time he failed to sign in. Levi's thought for a while, probably because Andrew's attitude towards him was not good. For some reason, Andrew, the rebellious boy, didn't like him a little bit. Maybe it was this reason that he failed to sign in. Considering that the people he signed in before were all very familiar people, it made sense. After successfully signing in Andrew's molecular destruction, as expected, the two molecular abilities were directly integrated into a complete super ability. Molecular manipulation, which can manipulate molecular structure arbitrarily. Although it is only a short introduction, it is already possible to know how powerful this ability is. By manipulating the molecular structure, everything can be created or destroyed. The specific step that can be achieved depends on the upper limit of the user's ability. It doesn't mean that having this ability makes you a god. With his current level 4 mutant strength, what he can do is still limited. And after signing the Strucker twins, the next day, Levi's signed Evangeline again and obtained the super ability Dragon Incarnation. Simply put, it is the ability to transform into a dragon. He hasn't tried this trick yet, but he thinks that if he turns into a dragon, his whole body defense will become very strong. And there will also be powerful strength, and moves such as Dragon's Breath. Definitely, maybe there was a side effect he didn't notice. Over the next few days, he signed in with other members of the Mutant Underground. Among them is the Computer Girl. Ability is to give the brain the computing power of supercomputers. This ability will greatly strengthen Levi's development and use of his own ability. After that, I signed Dreams, Pedro, Skylar and others. Chapter 30 The Missing Naughty. Host, Levi's. Super ability, Vector Operation, Space Movement, Freeze Mastery, Flame Mastery, Energy Absorption, Electromagnetic Force, Evolution, Telepathy, Super Infrasound, Space Reversal, Atomic Collapse, Stealth, Molecular Manipulation, Dragon Incarnation, Super Brain. Unimportant super abilities are not listed. Super ability level, LV.4, Level 4 Mutant. Experience value, 10,000 2,000ths. In a month's time, Levi successfully signed in 20 times, which made his experience value increase by 1/5. After signing in, Levi's did not stop there, and returned to Mutant Academy with Claris and Polaris. He was greeted by Storm and Shadowcat. Welcome back. Seeing Claris and Polaris beside him, Storm winked, apparently misunderstanding something. Levi's shrugged and didn't explain. It's great that you're back, Vice. Shadowcat on the side seemed a little excited. What's wrong? Levi's looked at her strangely. It's the little naughty she. What's wrong with her little naughty? Little naughty she disappeared, and the whole school has not found her. What? Missing? Levi's was stunned for a moment. How could he be missing at school? Do you know about Teacher Rolo? Storm sighed. I definitely know about that. So where did the little naughty go? Levi's asked with a frown. Oh. Come with me first. After speaking, Storm turned and left. Levi's frowned and thought for a moment, and soon there was a guess. Could it be that thing? Without thinking about it, he followed. Clarice and Polaris looked at each other as if they were confused, but they didn't ask any more questions. The group followed Storm into a conference room. Kin, Cyclops, and Logan were all silent, and the atmosphere was a little dignified. I brought, Storm said to everyone in the conference room. Why did you bring him here? Don't you think it's not messy enough yet? Cyclops couldn't help frowning after glancing at Levi's. You should send this kid back to the room and let him sleep well, Logan said bluntly. Now is not the time to sleep. Levi's shrugged and sat down in the conference room. Mr. Olo, now you should be able to tell me where the little naughty went. Boy, this is not something you should be involved in. At this point Logan put his hand on his shoulder, trying to get him to leave. However, no matter how hard he tried, Levi's didn't seem to feel the slightest bit, and still sat there motionless. Uncle Logan, can I trouble you to remove your wolf paw? He said with a half smile. It's not that he underestimates Wolverine, but now he has been blessed with two super abilities, evolution and dragon incarnation, and his power is extremely powerful. Even without vector manipulation, Wolverine can't move him. Seeing this, Logan had no choice but to withdraw his hand silently. Everyone, stop arguing. Is qualified to stay. As for your words, Storm said and looked at Clarice, Polaris and Shadowcat outside the door. We want to help too, Shadowcat hurriedly said. You geese should know who I am, and I am absolutely qualified to be involved in this. Polaris walked in with a proud look on his face. I said, you kids should go back to the dormitory, say goodnight to your classmates, and then go to sleep. Logan was a little irritable, obviously not knowing who the little girl in front of him was. Would you like to try it on? A green light appeared in Polaris' hands and gave Logan a defiant look. Logan's temper can't stand the provocation of the little girl. He just wanted to stand up, but found that his body was very heavy and completely out of control. Levi's couldn't help laughing at this. Wolverine met Magneto's father and daughter as if they met their nemesis. Cough, I forgot to introduce. Levi's coughed dryly. This is Magneto's daughter Polaris Lorna. You must have heard of it. Hearing this, it was not surprising that Jean and Cyclops had a calm expression. Logan's response, however, was overwhelming. Why did you bring Magneto's daughter here? Don't you know that the little naughty was taken away by Magneto? Logan glared at him with blue veins all over his body. As soon as Levi's heard the secret message, he heard that the little naughty was missing before, and he guessed that it might be Magneto's hand. Sure enough, and Magneto's purpose of catching the little naughty is self-evident. It is precisely to use the little naughty that can absorb the characteristics of mutant ability, absorb his power, and then activate the machine that can make ordinary people awakening's genes. Due to the high cost of starting this machine, it is basically dead after starting the machine. And Magneto didn't want to die like this, so he found the little naughty to replace him. Uncle Logan, can you be quiet? You don't need to look to know that Polaris belongs to our side now, Levi's said helplessly. I'd love to trouble Magneto. Polaris looked excited. Hearing her words, Logan finally calmed down. Okay, let's get down to business now. Why did Magneto take the little naughty? Where is the little naughty now? And what about Professor X? Levi's asked several questions in a row. He definitely knew the answers to these questions, but it was better to ask them. We don't know Magneto's purpose yet, and we don't know where the little naughty is now. If Professor X is there. Kin didn't say anything halfway through. What happened to Professor X? Levi's frowned. The professor was plotted by Magneto and is now unconscious, Cyclops said coldly. Chapter 31 The Professor X. Professor X is in a coma. What the hell is going on? Levi's frowned. Kin on the side said with some guilt, it's Mystique. She has become like me, and moved her hands and feet in the brainwave booster. Professor X fell into a coma while using the brainwave booster to find the little naughty. So it is. What Kin said was pretty much what he knew. Take me to see Professor X. This time, everyone turned their attention to him. Do you have a way to cure Professor Vice? Kin asked excitedly. Kin is the most guilty or Professor X's appearance now. After all, Mystique changed the brainwave intensifier by changing into her appearance. Storm and Cyclops also had some expectations in their hearts. I can't say it's absolutely possible, but you can try. Levi's folded his arms and looked confident. He didn't say anything. After all, he didn't know Professor X's current situation. However, both his vector manipulation and telepathy can manipulate mental power, so it should be no problem to heal Professor X. Okay, come with me. Cyclops decided to take his word for it. Today's X-Men is like a mess without Professor X. It is impossible to rescue the little naughty, and he can only gamble. In the ward, Professor X lay peacefully on the hospital bed. X-Men's spiritual pillar just fell, which was a big blow to X-Men. Levi's came to Professor X without saying a word, put his hand on the professor's bald head and felt it carefully. Cyclops and Storm behind him were a little puzzled, not knowing what method he would use to heal Professor X. This time after Levi's left the academy. First used multiple abilities to rescue Polaris, then brought back the 4th level mutant, and finally broke the Hellfire Club's conspiracy. This series of things, if any of them are replaced, they may not be able to do it. That's why Cyclops, Jean, and Storm believed him so. Only Logan, who usually doesn't care about these things, doesn't know anything about Levi's. He thinks that Levi's is the little kid who didn't have the awakening ability. I understand. At this moment, Levi's, who closed his eyes and felt it carefully, spoke up. I can perceive that the professor's mental power is very powerful, but this mental power is very chaotic now. Several powerful mental powers are scattered in his mind, so it is no wonder that the professor is in a coma. Cyclops and Storm were a little excited when they heard the words. Is there a way to cure it? Definitely, it shouldn't be difficult. Professor X's mental power is very powerful. After using the brainwave intensifier, his mental power can directly cover the entire Earth. It is indeed the most powerful spiritual mutant before. Why do you say it was before? Because after Levi's became a 4th level mutant, the title of the strongest spiritual mutant should be given to him. With the blessings of the 2 super abilities of telepathy and super brain, now his mental power is not unexpectedly above Professor X's. Definitely, a grade 5 mutant doesn't count. In fact, the real mutant super ability of kin is also telepathy, but it is only the level of the 3rd level mutant. It was the Phoenix Force who chose her that made her extraordinarily powerful. Vice, please, make sure to heal the professor, Kin said a little excitedly. I'm doing. After speaking, Levi stopped talking but concentrated. In order for Professor X to wake up, he had to calm the chaotic mental energy in his mind. When everyone saw this, they all fell silent. It seems very simple to straighten out the mental power in Professor X's mind, but it is not easy to do. Even Accelerator is at full capacity when doing this kind of thing to Sister Misaka, let alone him. Thanks to his super ability of telepathy. Otherwise, there is really no way to rely on vector operations. In cases where both telepathy and vector operations are used. An hour has passed. Levi's finally breathed a sigh of relief, then slumped into the chair beside him. It was the first time that he performed delicate operations on mental power, and it really made him a little tired. Professor Cyclops and Hecken on the side saw that Levi's had finished his treatment, and immediately came to Professor X and shouted, Vice, are you alright? Polaris and Clarice and Shadowcat gathered around him with concern. It's okay, just a little tired. Levi smiled and shook his head. Polaris saw him sweating profusely and took the initiative to wipe the sweat for him. Her action made Clarice a little annoyed. Why didn't she think of it? Vice, why hasn't the professor woke up yet? Seeing that Professor X hadn't woken up yet, Cyclops asked anxiously. Levi's rolled his eyes. How can it be so fast? Although I have sorted out the chaotic mental power in the professor's mind, it is not a matter of time and a half to wake him up. Cyclops was a little embarrassed to hear that. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Levi's didn't bother with him either. He understood the mood of Cyclops at the moment. Chapter 32 The Trust of Professor X. Another half hour passed. Professor X's eyelids moved. This action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Finally, under everyone's attention, Professor X slowly opened his eyes. Professor, you're finally awake. Kin grabbed Professor X's hand, and the red tears in her eyes couldn't help flowing. Guys, I'm much better. Professor X looked at everyone with a look of relief, especially when he saw Levi's. His eyes were full of admiration. Vice, good boy, you did a great job. Although Professor X passed out, most of his mental power went berserk and uncontrolled, but a small part of the mental power that he could control was still able to observe some situations outside. With this small part of his mental power, he may be able to slowly regain control of all mental power, but it will take too long. The help of Levi's undoubtedly allowed him to regain control of his mental power faster. At the same time, it also made Professor X feel that Levi's is not weaker than himself. This made him sigh in his heart. Worthy of being the 5th level mutant he identified. There are many kinds of abilities, and each ability is very powerful. The most important thing is that Levi's just had awakening ability a month ago, but now he has surpassed him. This growth rate is really exaggerated. And what Professor X sees in Levi's is not only great strength, but also courage and resourceful wisdom in the face of danger. He watched everything Levi's did after leaving the academy. This kid is a natural leader. Thinking of this, Professor X couldn't help but sigh. Maybe he should retire, and it might be a good thing to entrust the future to the children. I'm just doing what I can do, Levi said with a smile. Hearing his words, Professor X's eyes became more kind. This kid is really nice, not arrogant or impetuous. Professor, what should we do now? Cyclops asked anxiously. Professor X looked at Cyclops and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Cyclops, as the captain of the X-Men, performed very well in every way. But he was very indecisive, and after he fell into a coma, Cyclops acted very impatient and indecisive. As a captain, it shouldn't be. Thinking of this, Professor X didn't criticize him either. Take me to the brainwave strengthening room. Professor X struggled to get up, and Kin immediately supported him. Levi's shook his head and said, Professor, your mental power has just calmed down, and you can no longer use your mental power for a short time. Professor X frowned. He also understood the truth. If he forcibly used the brainwave intensifier, it would probably damage his mental power again. Let me do it, Levi suggested. You? No, Using a brainwave intensifier is very dangerous. Storm shook his head and refused. Yeah, Vice has no experience in using a brainwave booster, and it would be very dangerous to use it suddenly. Jean on the side also disagreed with him taking the risk. In the face of everyone's opposition, Professor X shook his head. No, let Vice go. His mental power is no longer under mine, and it's okay to use a brainwave intensifier. What? Everyone was a little surprised to hear Professor X's words. Levi's mental power has surpassed Professor X. What a joke. Vice, you should have telepathy too. Professor X looked at him and said, yes, I do own telepathy. Levi's shrugged and didn't hide. As his strength gradually becomes stronger, there are very few people in this world who can threaten him, and it doesn't matter if he exposes a few super abilities. Cyclops and Storm and Jin were shocked to see him admit it. As far as they know, Levi's should have the ability to move and space, freeze, and reflect. But I didn't expect that he actually has telepathy ability, and his strength is not weaker than Professor X. This really surprised a few people. After all, a month ago, Levi's was just an ordinary person. Vice, how many super abilities do you have? Storm asked suspiciously. Okay, you guys should hurry up and go to the brainwave strengthening room. Professor X interrupted Storm's words, and since Levi's chose to hide, they didn't need to look into it. Storm had no choice but to give up. Then Professor, take a good rest, and we will leave the matter of saving the little naughty back to us. Levi smiled and follower Storm left the room. Cyclops and Jin stayed behind to take care of Professor X. Looking at the few people who left, Professor X suddenly sighed. This kid is really good, maybe he can take my place. Hearing this, Cyclops and Kin were a little surprised. They didn't expect Professor X to rate Levi's so highly. Chapter 33 Brainwave Intensifier. Looking for little naughty. The other side. Levi's and the others came to a room full of technology. Just wait here, Storm said to Logan and Polaris behind them. After that, Storm took Levi's into the brainwave strengthening room alone. Here is a cylindrical building like a deep well. In the middle of the building, there are some instruments. That's the brainwave intensifier. Levi's looked at the device in front of him. Yes, I'll teach you how to use it. Storm nodded and started teaching him how to use the brainwave intensifier. It doesn't take much time to have the super ability of super brain, and it is quite possible to have the absolute memory ability. His brain is like a supercomputer, and he will never forget anything as long as he has seen or heard it. After making sure he had learned how to use the brainwave booster, Storm backed out. Then Levi's directly activated the brainwave intensifier. In the next instant, his spiritual power spread all over the world. The huge flow of information made him a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, his brain, like a supercomputer, can automatically block out useless information. In the world of spiritual power, all human beings in the world are grey and white, while the mutant with super ability is red. He just needs to find the little naughty among these mutants. Magneto's helmet can shield mental power, but not the little naughty. Under his super brain operation, he soon found the position of the little naughty. Turning off the brainwave intensifier, Levi's walked out. How is it? Did it go well? Storm couldn't help frowning when he saw him come out so quickly. You must know that if Professor X uses the brainwave strengthening device, it will take much more time than him. Levi's shook his head flatly. What? Didn't find it? Storm and Logan were disappointed to see him shaking their heads. No, what I want to say is that it's too simple, and it's easy to find the position of the little naughty. Levi's finally couldn't help laughing when he saw their disappointment. Found it. Storm and Logan looked at each other, then a little surprised. Really found? Where? In Liberty Island. Magneto brought Little Naughty to Liberty Island. Levi's directly stated the location of Little Naughty without any nonsense. Great, I have to tell the professor the news quickly. Storm doesn't suspect him, then turns away. Seeing this, Levi's couldn't help shrugging his shoulders, then said to Polaris and Clarice, let's go to the professor's side too. The group returned to Professor X's ward. Professor, Vice has found the place for the little naughty. Storm happily told the news to several people in the room. Did you find it? Professor X nodded in relief. That's right, Magneto has brought the little rascal to Liberty Island, Storm added. So what do we do next? Hearing this news, Cyclops instinctively looked at Professor X, waiting for him to make up his mind. However, Professor X shook his head. Let Vice handle this matter. I believe he will be able to solve it. What? Cyclops and Storm were stunned when they heard Professor X's words. Huh? Are you calling me? At this time, Levi's and Polaris also returned to the ward. Professor, no, he's just a kid, Cyclops said to Professor X anxiously. Levi's was a little confused by this. Don't say it. I believe Vice will be able to handle this matter. After Professor X finished speaking, he said to Levi's, Vice, how about I plan to leave the rescue of the little naughty to you? Pass it to me? Levi's is confused. Isn't this still the X-Men Captain Cyclops? Why leave it to him to make arrangements? What are you kidding? However, Professor X nodded seriously. Yes, I have seen everything after you left school, and I think you will be able to do it well. Since Professor X said so, well, I promise. It's really impossible for ordinary people to grab people in the hands of Magneto, but it is still very simple for Levi's today, so he simply agreed. Cyclops and Logan only felt that Professor X's decision was a bit of a joke, but Professor X was very serious. Okay, you all go out. This matter will be handled by Bbook, and you all have to cooperate with him. After speaking, Professor X closed his eyes and rested. He was indeed a little tired after recovering his energy. Everyone looked at each other. Since the professor said so, then let's go out and discuss the battle plan first. Levi's coughed dryly. Come with me, let's go to the combat command room. Storm still believes in his ability very much. Although Cyclops and Logan did not believe him, they followed. Chapter 34 Rescue the Little Naughty Plan. The group came to the combat meeting room. Although you may not believe in my strength, it doesn't matter, because I will prove it with facts, Levi said and glanced across the crowd, finally pausing on Cyclops and Logan. It is self-evident who is saying this. Cyclops and Logan didn't speak with stinky faces. Next, let's sort out the current information first, and then make arrangements. Perhaps as Professor X said, Levi's was born with the ability to lead, and soon he entered the state. First, Magneto invented a special machine that, through irradiation with this machine, allows ordinary people to activate the X gene to become mutants. So in retaliation for MP Kelly, who proposed the mutant registration bill, Magneto intends to use this machine on Liberty Island. Speaking of which, I have to mention that Senator Kelly is the first guy in the original book who was irradiated by Magneto's machine and activated the X gene to become a mutant. It is precisely because X became a mutant that he was able to get out of Magneto's cage. But the good times didn't last long, and the machine was fatally flawed. Although it can help ordinary people with Awakening's gene, ordinary people will cause gene collapse in a short period of time because of forcible Awakening's gene. And Magneto just didn't know about this. He thought that the machine he created was successful, so he was anxious to start action. And the purpose of using machines on Liberty Island is self-evident, because across from Liberty Island is Manhattan Island, where a meeting of leaders of various countries is being held. As long as the leaders of all countries are turned into mutants, then countries will definitely cancel the bill against mutants. Magneto's idea is very good, but the fault was that his machine wasn't complete, and that there were huge amounts of flaws. Otherwise, this approach may be a good way to solve the conflict between mutant and ordinary people once and for all. Ordinary people are afraid of mutant, but they are not envious of mutants' super ability. In just a few words, Levi spoke out about Magneto's purpose and flawed plans, much to the surprise of Cyclops and Storm, among others. Because even they didn't think so much. So what do we do next? Cyclops asked unconsciously. Definitely to get the little naughty back before the Magneto plan, and the machines made by Magneto must also be disposed of. If Magneto got too hot to use the machine himself, that would be bad. If such a thing were to happen, not only Magneto himself would die, but all the ordinary humans in New York would probably be killed. That would be the biggest murder in human history, and the common man and the mutant would be immortal. Definitely, there are many ways to deal with this machine. It is not necessary to destroy this semi-finished machine. Okay. Do you have any objections? If not, we'll set off. I have one more thing. Cyclops stood up and said, Go ahead. Levi's waited for his question with his arms crossed. How do we deal with Magneto? I don't think he's going to give us the little naughty so easily. The problem of Cyclops is also the problem of Storm and Kin. Magneto's strength has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Can they complete the task successfully? As reckless as the original, real Magneto doesn't follow the script. Faced with this question, Levi's shrugged and said with a smile, It can be said that this question is the last thing you need to worry about. His confident look made everyone stunned. Only then did they remember that Levi's was no longer the ordinary person he was a month ago. Now his telepathy is no longer under Professor X, not to mention his ability was not telepathy in the beginning. If all his abilities have the level of Professor X, then no one will be his opponent. Thinking of this, Storm, Cyclops, and the others looked at each other with surprise. All right, let's go. After a while, everyone changed into the black combat uniforms that belonged to X-Men. Levi's tried it and felt good. Vice, what about us? Then Polaris and Clarice came over. You guys. Levi's shrugged helplessly, apparently not preparing their clothes here. Clarice, you and Katie will wait for news at the academy. Just go with Lorna and me. He thought about it for a while and decided not to take Clarice and Shadowcat. The two of them hadn't fought much at all. It will be very troublesome when it comes to danger. Clarice and Shadowcat looked sad when they heard his words, but they didn't object, and they knew they might have caused trouble in the past. Don't worry, the mission will go smoothly if I'm here. You can just wait for the good news at the academy. Levi's comforted with a smile. We're getting ready to go. Storm shouted not far away. Okay, here we come. Levi's agreed, then walked towards the underground parking lot with Lorna. Chapter 35 Sign into Storm. Weather manipulation. In the underground of the school playground, there is a black fighter plane full of futuristic technology. S.H.I.E.L.D. so cool. Although Levi's knew that there was a dedicated X-Men fighter in the ground, He had never seen it, and it was really cool to see it now. This is the X-Men's exclusive car. It has. Let's get on the plane. Storm interrupts Cyclops pretending. Then they all got on the plane together. The school playground was suddenly opened, followed by the roar of the plane. The students who were resting in the dormitory were all attracted by this movement. When they saw the black fighter jets, the students were not too surprised. X-Men used fighter jets a lot of times, and they had seen such scenes many times. Then, in the eyes of the students, the black fighter plane disappeared in an instant. Definitely, this is not the disappearance of the fighter, but the optical stealth. In the dark, you want to find a fighter that has entered optical stealth, unless you hear the roar of the fighter at a very close distance. Otherwise, the existence of fighter jets cannot be found at all by ordinary means. The speed of the fighter planes was very fast, and after half an hour, they had already approached the New York Liberty Island. After this bridge, we're going to Liberty Island. Storm will take cover, Cyclops said without looking back while piloting the plane. This is Liberty Island. The military on the island is fully equipped. If you don't take cover, it is still easy to be discovered. Definitely, Levi's thinks it's easier to be detected by covering up. And he found that when they went out to perform tasks, everyone would call each other by their titles. But he doesn't seem to have a title. Levi's touched his chin. Maybe he should have a loud title too. Clear. Storm agreed, then rolled his eyes. At this time, a white cloud suddenly appeared in front of the fighter. Manipulating the weather. Levi's looked at Storm, who rolled his eyes with interest. As far as he knows, Storm can control all kinds of weather at will in a large area. It can also change the temperature, humidity, moisture, atmospheric pressure and molecules in the air in the surrounding environment. There are even atmospheric phenomena that she can control electromagnetic waves. Through these she is able to form elements in nature to attack. These elements are mainly wind, cloud, rain, snow, hail, fog and thunder. This ability is quite comprehensive. Thinking of this, he moved in his heart and then signed Storm. Ding. Did the host check into Mutant Storm? Sign in. Ding. The sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability weather manipulation, with 100 experience points. Levi's is in a good mood after successfully signing in the weather manipulation ability. Storm is a level 3 mutant who in the comics once manipulated hailstones and nearly wiped out all of Africa. Definitely, manga is manga, and it's definitely not that powerful in movies. If Storm now controls the hail, at most it will cover the entire Liberty Island. But it's different when used by Levi's. The 4th level mutant can make the hail cover a larger area. Maybe it can really cover the whole of Africa. Soon the fighter plane passed through the clouds, and the entire Liberty Island appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, beneath the statue of Liberty Island, Magneto had noticed the mist rising over the river in the distance. Let other people make up their minds. The people who get in the way of our plan have come. Hearing Magneto's words, Sabretooth, who was behind him, stupidly turned around and left, as if he wanted to meet the enemy. However, before he could go far, he was stopped by Magneto. You stay, Sabretooth. I will become weak when I pass the energy to that little girl. You are responsible for protecting me. Sabretooth, who was originally aggressive and fierce, could only stand there obediently when he heard this. At this moment, the blonde woman on the side said, Eric, I didn't feel Charles in the plane. He should not come. Hearing this, Magneto said indifferently, it seems that Raven successfully delivered the things I prepared for Charles. You killed him? The blonde woman asked in surprise. No, that thing will only keep Charles quiet for a while at most. After a pause, Magneto continued with a somewhat complicated expression. Although Charles and I have different views and practices, we are both working hard for Mutant's future. If there is anyone in this world who wants him to die the most, it is definitely me. The blonde woman heard this and shrugged boredly. I'm not interested in knowing about your business. I'm here to deal with Charles for you. Now that he's not here, what should I do? Magneto was silent for a while. Go deal with the kids that Charles taught me. Don't let them mess me up. By the way, those kids are Mutant's hope too, so try not to hurt them. You are really good at calling people. The blonde woman was a little helpless, but she did not refuse. Chapter 36 Mystique's Assault. At the same time, Levi's and the others finally came to the lake below the Statue of Liberty Island. Cyclops slowly landed the fighter on the water. I have to say that this fighter is indeed very advanced. It can not only achieve optical stealth, but also amphibious, which is really convenient. Boom! Exclamation mark. However, it seems that the drop was too strong, causing the fighter to shake a little bit. Sorry. Cyclops was a little embarrassed. Technology sucks. Logan couldn't help complaining. After getting off the fighter plane, everyone came to the Statue of Liberty Island. Inside the statue is a huge amount of museum with various exhibition items. The strange thing is that there is no one guard here. It should be the reason for the holiday. The group entered the museum. However, when passing the detection level, the alarm is triggered. Levi's turned his head and saw that it was Logan. This triggered the security alarm because the body was full of adamantium. Seeing this, he couldn't help but tease, Uncle Logan, It seems that you shouldn't be able to fly. Logan didn't say a word, just stretched out his wolf paw to grab the security alarm, and finally gave him a middle paw. All right. Levi's shrugged and felt a little funny, but I didn't expect Logan to have this kind of humor. And to the museum interior. Be careful, the enemy may be nearby. Cyclops reminded behind him. Don't worry, no one here can hurt me. Levi smiled indifferently. There are enemies here. Then Logan stepped in front of him, his nose twitching as if looking for something. Hey, Logan, don't act on your own. Cyclops couldn't help but remind him again, but as soon as he finished speaking, Logan disappeared around the corner. Cyclops, Storm and the others looked at each other, feeling a little helpless. At this moment, the other side, Wolverine came back. Levi looked at the Wolverine in front of him with interest. If he guessed correctly, the Wolverine in front of him should have been changed by Mystique. It looks completely indistinguishable from the real Wolverine, and the original can even conjure up the exact same claws as Wolverine, which is really amazing. Looks like you didn't find anything. Cyclops couldn't help but tease him when he saw him returning empty-handed, taking revenge for being teased by Logan just now. Levi's watched Mystique approach, ready to subdue her. It was at this time. Suddenly another Wolverine rushed out on the other side. The two scuffled together in an instant. What's going on? Polaris was a little surprised when two Wolverines suddenly appeared. One of them should be from Mystique, one of Magneto's men. Levi's explained it for her. Oh. So how do you tell two people now, which is the real one? I think whoever has harder claws is the real one. Levi's chuckled lightly, folding his arms. Wolverine's claws are adamantium. Mystique may be able to imitate others, but this one certainly cannot. It makes sense, so we just look at it like that. Even so, Cyclops has no intention of intervening. After a while, one of the Wolverines had been kicked several times in a row. In fact, from the way the two fought, you could tell who was real and who was fake, but the battle was too intense, so I didn't see it for a while. The battle between the two did not go to other places like the original, but to Levi's and the others. It was at this time. The two Wolverines suddenly stopped fighting and then grabbed Levi's at the same time. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Then Storm couldn't help exclaiming, "What are you doing, Logan?" At this moment, a green light bloomed in the hands of Polaris beside him. One of the Wolverines stopped, while the other Wolverine kept stabbing Levi's. Boom! Exclamation mark. There was a crisp sound, and the claws of Wolverine shattered instantly when they caught him. Wolverine screamed in pain, then backed away. What's the matter with you, Logan? At this time, Cyclops and other talents reacted. That one isn't Wolverine, this one here is. Polaris pointed to Wolverine, who was under her control. Storm and Cyclops and others also understood this. What can be controlled by Polaris is the real Wolverine, and what is not controlled is obviously Mystique. Looks like Uncle Logan is under control. Levi's was not surprised to see Logan, whose eyes were blank. Since he came to Liberty Island, he has used telepathy to scan the entire goddess statue. Compared with the original book, there seems to be one more person here. After speaking, he snapped his fingers, and Logan woke up immediately. What happened? Logan looked at himself flying in the sky with a confused expression. Polaris sees this and puts him down. Before Cyclops and the others could explain, Logan saw the person who was exactly like him just now, and then rushed up and scuffled together again. Chapter 37 Playing with the White Queen. That's when the two Wolverines scuffled together again. Levi suddenly sensed a psychic force swept over. Is the target Cyclops? Apparently the other side also wants to control Cyclops to attack. But since he was discovered, he would definitely not let the other party succeed. Levi's powerful mental power was swept out, and instantly repulsed this strange mental power, and then found the source of the strange mental power. He looked up at the second floor of the museum, and saw a blonde woman who looked almost the same as the 5 Cuckoo sisters standing there. Polaris and Storm followed his gaze. White Queen? Storm exclaimed when he saw the blonde woman. Who is the White Queen? Polaris apparently hadn't heard of the White Queen name. That's one of the leaders of the Hellfire Club. Levi's explained it simply. He didn't expect the White Queen to be here, and the original book didn't have it. Was it invited by Magneto? I have to say that I underestimate you, especially you. The White Queen said. His last eyes were fixed on Levi's. She really couldn't believe that the mental power that was so powerful that she instantly retreated was actually used by the person in front of her. Why are you here, White Queen? When he said these words, Cyclops had already pressed his fingers beside his glasses, ready to attack. That's it. I won't let you go up. White Queen didn't explain the problem. It seems that if you want to save the little naughty, you have to pass the test. Levi's mouth was slightly raised, and then he said to Cyclops and the others behind him, you go up first, she will leave it to me to deal with. Cyclops and Storm nodded and walked towards the elevator. Vice, I'm here to help you. Polaris didn't leave but wanted his help. No, forget it. Just stay here. I'll deal with this guy soon and take you to Magneto. Levi's said and came to the White Queen's side. When White Queen saw him suddenly disappearing and appearing beside her, she was shocked, and her whole body turned into a diamond state. The whole body is transformed into a diamond that can easily resist bullets, which is one of the super abilities of the White Queen. Diamond? I don't know if I can sell it for money. Levi's rubbed his chin and teased. The White Queen did not speak, but rushed over directly. Oh. Want to fight in close quarters? Then I'll fight you. Levi's chuckled and stood still. Seeing this, White Queen had no intention of showing mercy. She had a lot of fighting experience, and the fist that turned into a diamond slammed into his face in an instant. Hey, don't you know whether to hit someone or not? Boom! Exclamation mark. Levi's had just finished speaking when the punch hit him in the nose. However, he didn't waver at all. On the contrary, the White Queen only felt a slight pain in his right fist. This surprised her very much, knowing that after she became a Diamond Man, there was no attack that could make her feel pain. Unexpectedly, she just punched the opponent, but made her fist ache faintly. What the hell is this ability? Well, can I not answer? Levi's shrugged. If it wasn't for his mercy, the White Queen's punch just now would probably shatter his own fist. You don't have to answer, but I will let you answer, the White Queen said coldly. After she finished speaking, she rushed up again to attack Levi's, using joint skills if she couldn't punch or kick. However, after some tossing, Levi's was fine, but White Queen himself was tired enough. Have you hit enough? If you hit enough, just grab it. Levi's didn't bother to mess with the White Queen anymore. As soon as he thought about it, he used molecular manipulation to create an iron chain out of thin air, and then used electromagnetic force to manipulate the chain to bind the White Queen. This momentary operation made White Queen's eyes widen. She couldn't believe that the man in front of her could create something out of thin air. This is simply too amazing. Lorna, let's go. Levi's ignored the White Queen, pulled Polaris and walked towards the upper level of the goddess statue. All the way to the upper floor. There are signs of fights here and there, and apparently Cyclops and the others have met their opponents. Probably Mystique and Toad, maybe Sabretooth. Among them, Toad impressed him the most. Don't look at Toad as a second-level mutant. Ability is nothing more than sticking its tongue out, but its combat effectiveness cannot be underestimated. Cyclops, Kin and Storm, who played in the original book, turned around in circles. And this ability says so. He has a bold idea! Exclamation mark. When Levi's and Polaris came to the top of the statue, they found that Cyclops and Storm, as well as Jean and Logan, were all bound by steel. You don't have to look to know who did it. Hey, how are you? Levi's walked over with a smile. As long as your eyes are normal, you can see that we are not good. Logan, with his hands tied to his chest, couldn't help but reply. Vice, don't talk nonsense, just untie it for us. Storm said anxiously. I'll come. Polaris, who was on the side, waved his little hand, and the steel that bound them was instantly opened. Chapter 38 Rescue the Little Naughty. First meeting Magneto. Magneto has already taken the Little Naughty up. We must rescue the Little Naughty as soon as possible, Storm said anxiously. Levi's nodded when he heard the words. Well, Teacher Kin, you can take care of Cyclops here. Let's go. Cyclops can't even open his eyes easily because of his special glasses, so he doesn't need to participate in the next battle. It would be best if Kin took care of him. Immediately afterwards, Levi's, Polaris, Storm, and Logan rushed towards the top of the goddess statue. Also around the corner. Suddenly, a pair of claws stretched out and grabbed Levi's at the front. Levi's didn't even look, grabbed the opponent's arm and threw it at Logan beside him. Uncle Logan, this person will be handed over to you. However, Logan, who was caught off guard, was directly smashed to the ground by the person thrown by Levi's. Ah. I said I didn't mean to believe you. Levi's looked at Storm and Polaris with some embarrassment. Storm and Polaris shrugged in apparent disbelief. Logan originally planned to settle accounts with him, but after seeing that the person who threw it was his good brother Sabretooth, he immediately became jealous. When the enemy met, the two soon scuffled together. At this moment, a cry for help came from above the goddess statue. Help! Who will save me? It's a Little Naughty voice. Storm exclaimed. Is Magneto's machine about to start? Polaris frowned. It seems that I can't waste time. I'll go save the Little Naughty first. Be careful. Levi's finished speaking, and before they could react, a spatial movement disappeared in front of the two of them. Vice. Polaris looked anxious as he suddenly disappeared. Let's follow along too. Storm looked up at the torch above the goddess, then walked towards the upper entrance. The other side. On the torch of the goddess. Is there anyone here to save me? At the moment facing the threat of life, the Little Naughty can only cry in tears. H.I.E.L.D, is there any reward for saving you? Levi's suddenly appeared in front of her and smiled. Vice. Seeing Levi's suddenly appearing in front of him, Little Naughty was pleasantly surprised. Don't worry, I'll save you right now. Levi's said that before trying to pull the handcuffs off her arm. Stop. It was at this moment that Magneto came to the room on the torch. Originally, Magneto wanted to start the machine as soon as possible, but he didn't expect that there would be one more person here. However, Levi's won't act according to the script. You say stop and stop. I saw his finger lightly click on the test on his hand, and the entire metal handcuffs collapsed instantly when he used the atomic collapse. Immediately after, He wanted to release another handcuff, but he saw that Magneto controlled the iron piece on the side and smashed it towards him. Yeah, Tilda, be careful. The little naughty couldn't help screaming when he saw the iron pieces smashed over Levi's back. Levi's looked helpless. He was not frightened by Magneto's sneak attack, but was shocked by the naughty high-decibel scream. Can you stop screaming? Levi's didn't pay any attention to the attack behind him. He rubbed his ear with one hand, and tapped the handcuff on the other hand of little naughty, and the handcuff instantly collapsed. At this time, Magneto's iron sheet also hit Levi's. In the face of this kind of physical attack, he has no interest in dodging at all, and directly uses the vector operation to change the direction of the force of the iron sheet, and the iron sheet is instantly reflected back. Magneto was shocked when he saw that the iron pieces bounced back at a faster speed. He put his hands in front of him, fully controlling the iron piece that was ejected back, and finally the iron piece stopped a few centimeters away from him. Looking at the iron pieces so close at hand, even Magneto couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. He almost died under the iron plate he controlled, which made him a little embarrassed. However, Magneto frowned when he saw Levi's, who easily took his attack unscathed and didn't even turn his head back. No one has been able to catch his attacking so easily. Who is the person in front of him? When did Charles cultivate such a powerful mutant again? Now Magneto is not in a hurry. Anyway, the little naughty was rescued, but as long as the young man in front of him is solved, the plan can still continue. And here, after Levi's untied the handcuffs of the little naughty's hands, because of maintaining a movement for a long time, the little naughty immediately fell down. Seeing this, he hurriedly grabbed her to prevent her from falling to the ground. Are you all right? Levi's asked concerned. It's okay. It's not right. Little naughty suddenly found that her hand was caught by him, and she hurriedly withdrew her hand. Levi's shrugged helplessly. Vice, are you all right? Little naughty realized that he didn't react at all after touching his skin. It's not like everyone else gets energy absorbing once they touch her skin. Chapter 39 The Battle with Magneto. Me? Definitely okay. Levi's smiled. Not to mention that he also has the energy absorption ability. It is said that he will not be energy absorbing if he has vector operations, so the naughty ability is completely useless to him. Is this true? The little naughty covered his mouth in disbelief, his eyes full of surprise. After the mutant ability of awakening energy absorbing, she was a little desperate for a while. After all, this ability prevents her from contacting anyone, so it is impossible to have a complete family, and she is destined to die alone. However, now there is someone who can contact her without fear of her ability, and who is also the person she likes, and has saved her at the most dangerous time. In this case, the little naughty only felt that she had found the Prince Charming. She hit. Weeping with joy, she hugged Levi's. Don't get excited, little naughty, I'll take you back later, and now you stand aside. The little naughty wiped his tears after hearing the words, and then stood to the side obediently, but his eyes were still fixed on him. Hey, Magneto's been waiting. Levi's turned to look at Magneto, who didn't continue to attack, and laughed. I want to know your name? Magneto looked at him with interest. Me? My name is Levi's, I just joined XMan, please advise. Levi's hearty self-introduction. Levi's, your ability is pretty good. It looks like Charles has found another capable child. Magneto has always been very fond and tolerant of Mutant, and although Levi's has just sabotaged his plans, it's still too late. Vice, do you know what Mutant's situation is now? Those people. Magneto said that he pointed to the distance, whereas Manhattan Island. There are most of the human beings in this world who oppose mutants gathered there. They hate mutants and even plan to destroy all mutants. After a pause, Magneto said to Levi's with a heavy face, if we don't do something, I'm afraid Mutant will be wiped out by humans sooner or later. Hearing these words, Levi's agrees very much. After all, in the future, humans have already figured out how to make Mutant return to normal. And there are plans to exterminate mutants like the Sentry Plan. Human creativity is limitless. If the mutants don't do something, they may only be left to die. He really admired Magneto for this. Magneto's eyes lit up when he saw that he agreed with him. So Vice, join me, let's create the future of Mutant. Come, let me introduce you to the machine I invented. Just start this machine, then all the leaders of the countries can be turned into mutants, so that the countries will not continue to target mutants. Magneto excitedly explained his brilliant plan to Levi's. Levi's listened to him silently, and nodded involuntarily. I have to say, Magneto, your plan is very good. If it is true, then the conflict between mutant and humans will indeed be resolved. Magneto couldn't help but smile when he saw his agreement. Charles has never understood my plans, and I didn't expect the children he taught to win my heart. In that case, Vice, you step aside first. Although this process may sacrifice your friends, it is worthwhile for Mutant's future. Being able to let Magneto, who has always been very tolerant of Mutant, say such words shows how persistent he is in his heart. Levi's, however, did not step aside. This made Magneto frown. Magneto, I do agree with you very much, but there is something wrong with your approach. What's the problem? Magneto was puzzled. The only problem with this plan is your machine. It's not perfect, remember Congressman Kelly? Magneto frowned. He successfully turned into a mutant and escaped. Levi's nodded. Yes, he did succeed in becoming a mutant, but he ended up dying from a genetic breakdown. It's not possible. Maybe it's just that he's just not comfortable with being a mutant. Magneto didn't believe what he said. Maybe even if he did, he thought it was just a few genetic breakdowns. It would be acceptable if most people could become mutants. Magneto, after so many years of waiting, why don't you study this machine that can make people a mutant? As long as it can turn ordinary people into mutants without side effects, I'm sure Professor X will support you. Levi's he frowned and persuaded. I can't wait anymore. Get out of the way. Magneto was impatient, and when he waved his hand, a few iron sheets flew out from the goddess statue, intending to tie him up. Yet Levi's didn't even look at the tin sheets. I saw that after the iron sheet touched his body, he was instantly ejected. What is your ability? Magneto frowned. Levi's crossed his arms and said, I call it reflection. No matter how strong your attack is, it will be reflected, so give it up. You can't hurt me. Magneto raised his eyebrows when he heard this, then waved with one hand. The next moment, countless iron sheets on the goddess statue flew up, forming a huge amount of iron balls in the air, and suddenly smashed towards him. Chapter 40 Magneto and Polaris, father and daughter meeting. However, the greater the force that comes over, the greater the force that bounces back. When the iron ball hit him, the iron ball was instantly reflected and smashed towards Magneto. This time, Magneto, who was prepared, was not so embarrassed, and easily took the iron ball that was ejected. This time, however, Magneto felt a little tricky. Although the iron ball just now was just a test, it also proved that ordinary physical attacks really couldn't hurt Levi's. This surprised Magneto, but he didn't give up. I saw him wave his hand again, and countless iron sheets entered like a cage, trapping Levi's inside. Vice. The little naughty who was not far behind shouted a little worriedly. However, there was no response. Can't get out now. Magneto smiled faintly. Levi's ability is indeed very powerful, and any physical attack is useless to him, but his weakness is also very obvious. Once trapped, it is difficult to break free. But just when he thought so, boom! Exclamation mark. I saw that the iron sheet that had trapped Levi's was blasted out directly. Magneto, you are too happy. Levi's sneered, and it was too whimsical that the iron sheet seemed to trap him. Magneto's expression darkened when he saw this, and he knew that if he didn't solve Levi's in front of him, I'm afraid his plan would not be able to continue. I saw that he suddenly flew up and raised his hands slightly. The next moment, the countless iron sheets around the statue of the goddess all gathered towards the sky. Apparently he was going to get serious. Levi's frowned upon seeing this. If there was too much commotion here, it might arouse the idea of Manhattan Island. It looks like Magneto can't go on. Thinking of this, his mind moved, and he saw that the iron sheets of the goddess statue that were pulled out by Magneto actually flew back one after another. How is that possible? You can even control the magnetic field? Magneto looked shocked. He didn't expect Levi's to be able to manipulate magnetism and grab things under his magnetism. How can that be? Nothing is impossible. Let's end this time with Magneto. Levi's said a direct message to Magneto, making him unable to control his body. It turned out to be mind control? Exclamation mark. Magneto was even more shocked when he realized that his body was incapacitated. Knowing that Professor X was in a coma, he didn't wear the telepathy shield. However, this is not important. The important thing is that Levi's has shown 3 super abilities from just now, and each ability is very powerful. That is to say, you're actually a level 5 mutant. Magneto was both shocked and envious. Although his mutant brotherhood was huge, there were only a few people who could use it. He had always known that the piano beside Professor X was a grade 5 mutant, but he didn't expect Professor X to find a grade 5 mutant again. Why didn't such good luck fall on him? Level 5 mutant, maybe. Levi's shrugged and didn't refute anything. In his opinion, the 5th level mutant was just his starting point. Vice, maybe we can have a good talk. Knowing that Levi's was a 5th level mutant, Magneto finally calmed down. He knew that it was impossible to use force. That's right. You and the professor should have had a good talk long ago. No, I mean have a good talk with you. Magneto was clearly aiming for him, not Professor X. Oh? Levi's was a little surprised that Magneto wanted to talk to him. Vice tilde. At this time, Storm and Polaris finally came to the torch of the goddess. You are finally here. Don't worry. The matter has been resolved. Levi's gestured with an okay gesture. It's great that you are all right. Storm finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the little naughty behind him was all right. Magneto. At this time, Polaris looked at Magneto with complicated eyes, and she had always held a grudge towards the father who had abandoned her since childhood. But after seeing the old man in front of him, he couldn't hate it. You. Are you Lorna? Magneto was also taken aback when he saw Polaris. Humphrey. Looks like you remember my name. Polaris snorted coldly. Levi's on the side looked at Magneto, whose expression was constantly changing, and it was only very interesting. You joined the X-Men. The calm Magneto looked at Polaris with a complicated expression. I didn't expect that I, who was abandoned by you since I was a child, would choose to join X-Men. Polaris smiled sarcastically. Magneto fell silent after hearing her words. When she chose to send the just-voiced Polaris to her aunt's house, she had already thought about the consequences. No wonder Polaris hated him so much now. Chapter 41 Magneto's shock. Seeing Magneto's silence, Polaris' eyes turned even colder. Levi saw that something was wrong, but it couldn't make the father and daughter really turn against each other. He knew that Magneto had fostered Polaris with his aunt because he didn't want his daughter to be involved in mutants' struggle with humans. He just wants his daughter to have a complete childhood. Lorna, say a few words less. I think Magneto has a reason for putting you in your aunt's house. Levi's coughed dryly. Humphrey. Polaris snorted and said nothing. Magneto looked at Levi's in surprise, as if he didn't expect him to speak for him. Mr. Storm, since our mission has been completed, let's go back to the academy directly. Go down and inform Teacher Kin and Teacher Cyclops. I'll take them back first. Levi's looked at Storm. Magneto will let us go? Storm looked at Magneto warily. She didn't believe Magneto would let them leave so easily. Don't worry. He won't stop us. Levi smiled and waved his hand. Storm saw that Magneto really didn't mean to shoot, so he believed it a little. Well then, be careful. After Storm finished speaking, he went back the same way and went down to inform Jin and Cyclops. Vice, if you agree with my philosophy, then come with me. Only I can create the future that belongs to Mutant. Charles will only bind you. After hearing that Levi's was taking him back to Mutant Academy, Magneto still tried to convince him. Well, let's go back and have a good chat. Now I have to help you deal with the impact of this time. Levi's waved his hand and ignored Magneto's words. This time, the incident was very big. Although no one has found it yet, the goddess statues have been dismantled into this appearance, and this incident will be discovered sooner or later. So before going back, the goddess must be restored. I saw his hand slightly raised. The next moment, I saw countless iron pieces all flying up from below, and then sticking back to their original positions. Definitely, that's not enough. After all, these iron pieces have been destroyed. Something shocking happened to Magneto and Polaris. I saw that under Levi's molecular manipulation, these iron pieces were restored to their original shape and then fit on the statue of the Taoist goddess. If you look closely, there is no difference at all. The entire goddess statue was restored to its original state in just a moment. This incredible scene simply stunned everyone. What is this ability? Magneto asked, looking at him in shock. I call it molecular manipulation. You can manipulate any molecular structure, Levi's explained briefly. Manipulators? Exclamation mark. Hearing his words, Magneto's heart trembled again and again. He was able to develop a machine that made people a mutant. How could he not understand the meaning of manipulating molecular structures? If the molecular structure can be manipulated at will, it means that everything can be created. This also explains why Levi's was able to restore the entire goddess in no time. Hand of God. Magneto said the name in shock. Legend has it that the Hand of God can create all things, and what is the difference between Levi's at the moment and God? Hand of God? This name is not bad, I have decided, and my title will be called God in the future. Ha 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 tilde. Levi's thought it was funny and joked. Magneto looked at him with a complicated expression. A fifth-level mutant with many powerful abilities, such a person might really be able to become a god. The little naughty behind her at the moment, her eyes were full of shock and admiration. After the shock, she felt that Levi's was so powerful and it was a matter of course. Not only her, but also Polaris was also staring at him. The strength of the man in front of her once again exceeded her expectations. This made her want this man even more. Okay, we're going back. You guys come and grab me. Levi's came to Magneto's side and put a hand on his shoulder, then looked at Polaris and the little naughty. The two hurried over when they heard his words. Immediately afterwards, Levi's launched a space move. In the blink of an eye they were back at the Mutant Academy. Wait here, I'll run again and bring back your machine, Magneto. After Levi's finished speaking, he disappeared in front of the three of them. The mental cues from Magneto were long gone, but instead of leaving, he just waited in place. Didn't make them wait long. Levi's brought back the machine and the White Queen, and Mystique and Toad, plus Sabretooth and Wolverine who stabbed Sabretooth at each other. And Storm and the others are on fighter jets. Soon, everyone was back at Mutant Academy. Chapter 42 S.H.I.E.L.D. Level 7 Agent Phil Coulson. The next day, Levi's came out of the room refreshed, ready to eat some breakfast. After bringing Magneto and his group back last night, Professor X had an all-night chat with Magneto. As for what the two were talking about, he had no idea. Such a big thing happened last night. Although the goddess statue was restored by him, it is impossible for all parties to not receive any news. Definitely, the follow-up impact of this matter is naturally handled by Magneto and Professor X, and it has nothing to do with him. Hey, Vice. Just as he was about to go to the student cafeteria to have something to eat, someone behind him stopped him. Morning, Mary. Levi smiled and greeted the little naughty behind him. You shouldn't have breakfast yet. I brought you some. The little naughty gestured by raising the breakfast in his hand. Levi's was a little surprised. How did the little naughty know that he didn't eat breakfast? And he found him with breakfast on purpose. But without thinking much, he took the breakfast rudely and said with a smile, thanks. I was just about to find a place to solve breakfast, but I didn't expect Clarice to come over from the other side. Let's have breakfast together. Clarice had planned to invite him to breakfast, but she didn't expect the little naughty to be here, and Levi's had a breakfast in his hand. Forehead. Levi's looked at the breakfast in his hand and suddenly had a headache. At this moment, not far away, a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes, with sunglasses and a box in his hand, came over. The middle-aged man is about 1.8 meters tall, about the same as Levi's. The most noticeable thing is his hairline. If you move it back a little bit, you can shave your head directly. Sorry, I'm looking for Professor Rex, the principal of the Xavier Gifted Youth School. Is he there? The middle-aged man came to the three of them very politely and asked, who are you? Levi's folded his arms and narrowed his eyes. Introduce myself. My name is Phil Coulson, and I am a Level 7 agent of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Phil Coulson said and took out a document from his jacket pocket. Hearing his introduction, Levi's secretly thought that sure enough, he had guessed that the man in front of him was S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson. It can be said that throughout Avengers, Phil Coulson has played a very important role. If it weren't for him, the big three of the Avengers wouldn't be sitting so nicely together. This is a very approachable man. But after hearing such a long list of S.H.I.E.L.D. names, he suddenly said with some wicked interest, what's the situation? It's the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Service. Phil Coulson repeated impatiently with a smile on his face. Oh, Levi's nodded and said, since you are looking for Professor X, then come with me. With that, he handed Clarice the breakfast in his hand. Clarice, you didn't eat breakfast. This is for you. I'm going to take this agent from that bureau to see Professor X. Phil Coulson couldn't help twitching when he heard him call what game. Before Clarice could speak, Levi's turned to Phil Coulson and said, come on, Phil Coulson agent. Thank you so much. Phil Coulson thanked. Then the two left. Only Clarice and the little naughty were left with some awkward atmosphere. The other side. Phil Coulson took the initiative to chat with Levi's. By the way, I don't know your name yet. You should be a student of this college. Definitely. My name is Levi's. Thank you very much for your help, Mr. Vice. Phil Coulson thanked him politely. Phil Coulson agent, you are so kind. Levi's smiled and waved his hand. He still had a good impression of Phil Coulson. Definitely, Phil Coulson is the agent. He's not too relaxed. If not, they may not know when they will be confiscated. The two came all the way to Professor X's office. Professor, this Phil Coulson agent has something to do with you. Oh. It's Phil Coulson's agent, I see. Professor X nodded and said to Levi's, by the way, Vice, Eric is looking for you for something. You can come over there. Magneto looking for yourself? Levi's was stunned for a moment, but nodded anyway, because he had something to ask Magneto too. Then you talk, I'll go out first. Closing the door, Levi's left the office. As for Professor X talking with S.H.I.E.L.D., Chapter 43 Cooperation with Magneto. Finding Magneto's room, Levi's knocked on the door. Come in. Some old voices sounded in the house. Levi's pushed the door open. Magneto, I heard you have something to do with me. In the room, Magneto silently looked at the machine in front of him that could turn ordinary people into mutants, and after realizing that he was coming, he said slowly, Vice, you're right, this machine does have many fatal flaws, but I can't improve it with my current ability. Levi's was a little surprised by Magneto's words, and it seemed that after a night of chatting with Professor X, he had come to terms with the fact that the machine was flawed. Really, it doesn't matter, if you can't do it alone, then let more people participate in the research. I believe it will be successful. He smiled indifferently. What are you going to do? Magneto looked at him suspiciously. Dr. Campbell, you must have heard his name. You controlled him? Magneto asked in surprise. That's right. Levi's nodded and continued. The Sentry plan launched by Dr. Campbell is no less a threat to mutants than the Mutant Act. If it is successful, then all mutants will be devastated. Magneto couldn't help frowning when he heard this. He also knew about Sentry's plan. It can be said that he knew most of the plans that threatened mutant. But I didn't expect that this plan would threaten all mutants. There is no doubt about Dr. Campbell's ability. If he is involved in the research of this machine, it will not take long for him to succeed. Levi's had great confidence in Dr. Campbell, who was the scientist who developed Sentinel, after all. Okay, I agree. What do you need me to do? Magneto nodded in agreement with his plan. Just help me find a secret laboratory, and leave the rest to me. If he wants to continue to study this machine, then a secret and well-equipped laboratory is essential, and he can find a way in this regard. Magneto just needs to find a safe place. As for the experimental equipment and the like, Levi's can also solve it. There are electromagnetic forces that can control the network. It can be said that if you want money, you only need to transfer some money that has not been used for a long time from the bank account of the ugly country. At that time, Even if the bank found out that the money was missing, they would not be able to find him. It can be said that the bank is directly regarded as its own wallet. Magneto nodded and agreed with his plan. Then the two talked about the details. They didn't stop until someone knocked on the door. Vice, are you in there? Lorna. Is there anything to ask me? Levi's opened the door and looked suspiciously at Polaris in front of him. Polaris glanced at Magneto in the room without a trace, and then said to him, Professor X is looking for you. Professor is looking for me? Okay, I'll go right there. Levi's nodded, then turned to Magneto and said, Magneto, let's talk next time. After saying that, he left. Definitely. He didn't forget to use today's check-ins before leaving. Ding. Did the host check into Mutant Magneto? Sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for gaining 200 experience points. What? Levi's was stunned for a moment, because this time he successfully signed in. He didn't get super ability, but instead gained 100 more experience points. What exactly is going on? It was only after he checked the system that he understood. It turns out that he already has the corresponding super ability, so it will become double the experience value. This made him a little regretful, thinking that he would be able to make his electromagnetic force stronger. But that's fine, it's not a loss to double the experience value. He looked at his system panel. Host, Levi's. Super ability, vector operation, space movement, freeze control, fire control, energy absorption, electromagnetic force, evolution, telepathy, super infrasound, space reversal, atomic collapse, stealth, molecular manipulation, dragon incarnation, super brain, weather control. Super ability level, LV.4, level 4 mutant. Experience value, 10,000 2,300. Come to Professor X's office. Levi's looked and didn't see Phil Coulson, and it seemed their conversation was over. Professor, are you looking for me? Yes, boy. Professor X looked up at him and smiled. How was your chat with Eric? Well, I've discussed it with Magneto. Immediately afterwards, Levi spoke out about his plan with Magneto. Professor X nodded after listening. Maybe this plan was still a little imperfect, but it was undoubtedly much better than Magneto's plan. If it is true that ordinary people can activate the X gene in the body without side effects and become a mutant, then Professor X is very much in favor. Once this plan is successful, it heralds that the conflict between mutant and humans will be completely resolved. Chapter 44 The Shock of the Director of Braised Egg. While Levi's was chatting with Professor X, the other side, Phil Coulson has returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. Chief. Phil Coulson pushed the door into the S.H.I.E.L.D. director's office. I saw a dark braised egg in the office processing documents. How did you find that person? Nick Fury, director of Braised Egg, looked up at Phil Coulson and asked. Phil Coulson shrugged. I haven't seen many students, but if it's that person, I've got a goal. Who is it? When I was in college, I met a young man named Levi's who led me to Professor X's office, and I still remember what Professor X said to him. What did he say? He said that Magneto was looking for him for something. Why would a young man let Magneto take the initiative to look for him? Doesn't that mean a problem? Phil Coulson spread his hands. If Levi's heard what he said, he would definitely applaud, as expected of a 7th level S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. It was only with the words at Professor X that the identity of Levi's was confirmed. As to why they were looking for Levi's, that's because some blurry footage is playing on the computer screen in front of Nick Fury. Judging from the picture, it is the picture of Levi's and Magneto fighting on the Statue of Liberty Island, and at the end Levi's waved his hand to restore the entire statue to its original state. The figures in the picture are relatively blurred, and one of the people who can manipulate steel must be Magneto. But another person left Nick Fury a little bit puzzled. Being able to defeat Magneto with ease, and still be able to show off a miraculous mutant like the Restoration Goddess, is definitely something S.H.I.E.L.D. should keep an eye on. Are you sure it's him? Nick Fury said solemnly. I'm 90% sure it's him. After all, this young man made me feel very unusual, and he was the one who rescued Magneto's daughter Polaris from detention in Mexico. Phil Coulson said and handed out a stack of documents. He looks like just a kid. Didn't expect to be able to beat Magneto so easily. Nick Fury was always in disbelief when he saw the pictures of Levi's. Indeed, what makes me even more unexpected is that he can restore the goddess statue to its original state. This ability is really... Phil Coulson was a little unconvinced when he watched the satellite surveillance video. How could human beings have such an ability? Shouldn't this be only possessed by God? Nick Fury took a deep breath and calmed down. It's a mutant after all, and it's normal to have a few freaks in there that can't be explained by science. According to my investigation, this little guy has more than one ability. Phil Coulson reminded. Nick Fury looked at the information, and it said that Levi's used the ability. They are reflection, freezing, space movement, electromagnetism, and finally the unknown ability that can restore the goddess. Seeing these introductions, Nick Fury only felt his scalp tingling. So many perverted abilities were concentrated on a young man. Did he want to be a god? He had a feeling that this young man might be more troublesome than Professor X and Magneto. Forget it, This kid shouldn't do anything out of the ordinary in the hands of Professor X for the time being. Nick Fury sighed and had to put the matter aside for now. It's been a week since the last incident. Magneto was not unexpectedly sent to the military prison by Professor X after all, this time, although the incident did not cause much damage. But in order to give an explanation to the military, Magneto had to go to the military prison to live for a while. Definitely, the military wouldn't dare to kill Magneto, or even torture him, and they had to eat and drink every day. After all, the Mutant Brotherhood is so numerous that without Magneto's restraint, the entire military would be in chaos. For Magneto, the military prison is just a place for calm thinking, and no one can stop him if he wants to come out. Although Levi's is preparing for the laboratory these days, he is still relatively leisurely on the whole, because he had already handed this matter over to the 5 Cuckoo sisters, and there was a spiritual connection between them. What you want to say can be conveyed with a single thought. This also makes Levi's very fortunate that he did not kill them, but chose to control them. At the same time, this week, he also signed Logan and Cyclops and others, obtained the super self-healing, Cyclops, and Diamond and shape-shifting abilities respectively. Needless to say, the super self-healing and Cyclops abilities are acquired by signing in on Wolverine and Cyclops. Diamondization is obtained by signing in on the White Queen, and the function is to make yourself diamondize. This ability is a bit tasteless for Levi's. Finally, there is the shape-shifting signed in from Mystique. This ability is very powerful. Just like Monkey King's 72 transformations, it can become anyone, and the target of shape-shifting is definitely limited to humans. As for signing in on Kin and Professor X, they all give double experience. Chapter 45, Disgust in the Streets. Today is the weekend. On the bustling streets of New York. Hey! Hurry up and catch up. Polaris couldn't help shouting when he saw Levi's, who was far behind. I know. Levi's sighed and followed. Knowing that he has the ability to move and space, and having been in the Mutant Academy all this time will inevitably be a bit boring. So Polaris proposed to use the space move to play in New York. Anyway, I had remembered the coordinates here when I came last time. Use the space move to come over at any time. So the two will be on the streets of New York. Levi's is not interested in shopping, so he might as well study physics seriously when he has time. Definitely, since he has the super ability of super brain, his brain is like a supercomputer. Using electromagnetic force, it is even possible to download data directly from the internet. Almost all physical knowledge is already stored in the brain. All does not need to be deliberately studied. Bored to follow. When Polaris saw this, he put his arm around him, and the two were dating like a couple on the street. After getting along for a while, Levi's also became familiar with Polaris, and no longer resisted such an intimate gesture. Polaris also seemed to know that he was a slow and serious man, so he didn't push it so hard. Although Western women are enthusiastic and bold, they also have a careful side. The two walked around and came to a large shopping mall, and the huge amounts of LED displays on the mall building attracted the two of them. Urgent notice: there is a sudden terrorist attack on the streets of New York. Please evacuate the local people quickly. Emergency notice. Seeing the news on the big screen, people in the square were a little confused. It was at this time. Boom! Exclamation mark. The ground trembled as if an earthquake had occurred, and then trembled again. It was as if something heavy was hitting the ground. It's an earthquake. Run away. Most of the crowd on the street thought it was an earthquake and ran away shouting. The whole square was in chaos for a while. What happened over there? Polaris looked curiously in the direction of the vibration. I think this shouldn't be a terrorist attack. With that said, Levi's used telepathy to check it out. After seeing clearly what happened over there, the corners of his mouth rose slightly and he said with a smile, "A very interesting thing happened over there. Let's go and see." Interesting thing? Polaris was also a little curious to hear him say that. Before she could think about it, Levi's took her to use the space to move. The next moment, the two came to a tall building. From here they could clearly see the center of the vibration. Which is what? Polaris stared at the center of the street below with some dismay. I saw a giant monster with a yellow body and a height of 3 meters, which was constantly destroying everything around it. Whether it was a car or a house, it was all destroyed by that monster. The so-called earthquake is precisely because of the destruction of this monster. Because of the appearance of this monster, the entire street became chaotic, and screams and cries were connected. It's hate. Levi's was a little surprised. Didn't expect hatred to appear here. That is to say, he looked up at the sky, and sure enough, there was a helicopter there. You don't have to think about it to know that it is General Ross, who created the hatred, and Dr. Banner. Abomination? Mutant? But I've never seen one so big. Polaris looked incredulous. Levi's couldn't help laughing at her silly appearance. That monster is not a mutant, but a human-made monster. Polaris was a little surprised when he heard this. It was created by humans? Why did they do this? Well, definitely for power. Levi's shrugged. Human beings are so contradictory, suppressing mutant on the one hand, and longing for great power on the other. At the same time, military soldiers began to appear in the streets, and they kept attacking the abomination with firearms. Even individual rocket launchers were used. However, This powerful bazooka was just tickle the hatred. I saw hate grabbing the fired cannonball and crushing it directly. The shrapnel and flames exploding from the cannonball did not harm the hatred at all. However, the hatred that had been smashing aimlessly now had a goal. Ordinary soldiers have nothing to do with such monsters, and the military soldiers suffered heavy losses for a while. General Ross in the helicopter looked a little ugly, and he could only make Dr. Banner on the side turn into a Hulk and jump down. My god, what kind of monster is this? Is it the end of the world? Who can stop this monster? In such a dangerous situation, there are still competent female reporters reporting at close range. Just as her voice fell, a big hole was suddenly smashed beside her. Chapter 46 Hate the Hulk vs. Hulk. The female reporter was taken aback, turned around and saw a huge amount of green palms sticking out from the pit. She was so frightened that she quickly backed away, and continued to broadcast while backing away. God. Another green monster appeared at the scene. The Hulk couldn't help but glance at her when he heard this. This look directly scared the female reporter into peeing. Facing such a monster, she, as a reporter, would have no resistance at all. Luckily, the Hulk turned around and charged towards Abomination after one look at her. God, I'm still alive. The female reporter who came to her senses collapsed on the ground and prayed devoutly. Today was the closest she had come to death, and she swore that she would never do such a dangerous job next time. Upstairs, Polaris frowned at the hatred wreaking havoc on the street. Won't we stop it? Levi's shook his head and smiled. No, someone will stop it. Don't you think that's coming? Hearing this, Polaris looked down, and sure enough, another giant appeared on the street below. It's just that this giant's body is full of green, and his size is smaller than his hatred. Another monster, Polaris exclaimed. Hee, this Hulk is genuine, that Abomination is just pirated. Levi's explained with a smile. But it seems that the hatred is even stronger. Generally speaking, pirated copies can't beat the genuine ones, but under the current situation, it will be very difficult for Hulk to defeat the Abomination. Abomination may be stronger at first, but Hulk can keep growing and getting stronger with anger, and Hulk is definitely stronger. But if he remembered correctly, Hulk was only injected with a serum that inhibited Hulk not long ago, which greatly weakened Hulk's strength. So it's hard to say who wins and who loses. Roar! Abomination roared after discovering the Hulk, instantly abandoned the surrounding military soldiers, and rushed towards the Hulk instead. In an instant, the two giants collided and greeted each other with fists and feet in a roar. The whole ground kept shaking. The two giants seemed to have some deep hatred, and they wanted to tear each other into pieces. And the Abomination, who was bigger in size, took the advantage, and I saw the Hulk being smashed and flying. The two giants turned into demolition teams, and everything was destroyed wherever they went. At the same time, in a corner, Phil Coulson and Melinda looked at each other as the two giants were fighting each other on the street. What about Phil Coulson now? Melinda asked with an ugly face. We can only report the matter to the director as soon as possible. Phil Coulson sighed. They were commissioned to collect the research report of General Ross before, but they didn't expect that just after they got some information. The two giants openly appeared on the street. This made a week of hard work for both of them in vain. But now they have no choice but to report the news. With so much happening in New York, S.H.I.E.L.D. definitely got the news. At the moment, Nick Fury is sitting in his office checking the satellite surveillance on the scene, watching the two giants making a riot in New York, but he has no intention of helping. After all, this thing was made by General Ross, and he has no obligation to wipe other people's butts. Moreover, even if he wanted to help, there was nothing he could do. Ordinary agents were not as good as the army when facing such monsters. Thinking of this, Nick Fury's heart to form a special team is even more urgent. Just when he thought so, he suddenly saw two special figures on the screen. He hastily zoomed in on the screen. In the picture, two figures, a man and a woman, are vaguely visible standing on the roof of the building and fighting below the viewers. But because the picture was too blurry, Nick Fury was not sure about the identity of the two, and he hurriedly called Phil Coulson. Hello, Chief. Phil Coulson, who received the call, was a little puzzled. Across from you, there are two people on the roof of Building 38. Can you see who they are? Sorry, Chief, I have to change my position. Phil Coulson ran straight to the roof behind him, and went up 30 floors in one breath. Some breathless Phil Coulson came to the roof to look at the roof on the opposite side. Sure enough, he found two people on the roof on the opposite side. I see it clearly, Chief. It's the little guy I told you last time, and Magneto's daughter Polaris. It was him. Nick Fury frowned at the two on screen. Phil Coulson, what do you think they're there for? Director, I think they're just dating. Phil Coulson shrugged. Nick Fury didn't refute this answer either. Chapter 47. Anyway, since this mighty mutant is outside the Mutant Academy, it's our best chance to get close to him. Phil Coulson is up to you. Phil Coulson suddenly grimaced when he heard this. Director, this is not a good job. As our best agent in S.H.I.E.L.D., I believe you can accomplish this task. Nick Fury showed great confidence in Phil Coulson. In fact it is. Phil Coulson is arguably one of Nick Fury's most trusted people. Hanging up the phone, Phil Coulson couldn't help sighing. It was really his misfortune to have this stewed egg chief. The other side. With Levi's and Polaris watching, Hulk was no match for Hatred at all. Although Hulk has rough skin and thick flesh, at the moment has been beaten a bit. Seeing that Hulk was no match, the helicopters in the sky joined the fight. The cannons on the helicopter kept shooting at Abomination, although it didn't hurt Abomination, but it also caused Abomination to be very painful, which successfully angered Abomination. Abomination roared at the helicopter in the sky, then he abandoned the Hulk and turned to climb the tall building. Apparently wanted to use the tall building as a springboard to shoot down the helicopter. This behavior surprised Levi's, and it seemed that the Abomination had retained some wisdom. Sure enough, the Hatred that kept jumping on the top of the high-rise building finally seized the opportunity to jump up and pounced towards the helicopter. Seeing this, the Hulk below roared and rushed towards the Hatred in the sky. At the critical moment, Hulk successfully blocked the Abomination, but the Abomination still grabbed the steel frame under the helicopter, and Hulk caught Abomination. Because of the two giants hanging on the helicopter, it suddenly became wobbly and finally fell into a building. After taking care of the annoying helicopter, the Abomination once again took aim at the Hulk. Boom! Exclamation mark. A punch of Abomination knocked Hulk off the tall building and onto the ground. The ground cracked and collapsed like a spider web in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Abomination jumped down from the tall building, stomping hard on Hulk. The power of this blow was really heavy enough, and Hulk was directly beaten and lost his temper. Hatred is the strongest. Abomination stood on top of Hulk, roaring up to the sky. At the same time, the other side. Levi suddenly receives a call from Professor X. Okay, leave the matter of the professor to me. Don't worry, there's no problem. It's just two big guys. After hanging up, Levi's looked back at the Abomination and the Hulk in the field. Originally, he didn't intend to take action, but he didn't expect that Professor X just called and asked him to take action to solve the Hatred. The reason is that Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. called Professor X and asked Professor X to subdue the two monsters that appeared in New York. Certainly, Nick Fury may have promised some benefits accordingly. So Professor X agreed. In addition, knowing that Levi's happened to be there, Professor X called. Are you going to take action against that monster? Polaris asked curiously after seeing him hang up the phone. That's right. The professor's task requires me to subdue these two big men. Levi smiled and nodded. Need my help? I don't think so, just watch it here, and I'll go back when I go. Levi smiled and waved his hand, and he was confident and easy to deal with the mere Hatred. It was at this time, after the end of the roar of Hatred, he seemed to feel uneasy, and he directly grabbed Hulk's leg and threw it aside. Yeah, Tilda. A scream caught Levi's attention, and it turned out that there was a woman in the house where Hulk was thrown. If this is hit by Hulk, the house will definitely not be able to stop it. The woman in the house is likely to be smashed into patties. At the critical moment, Levi's came to Hulk in a flash, and pressed one hand on him, and the vector operation instantly changed the direction of the power on Hulk. He easily picked up the flying Hulk. The woman in the room behind her finally stopped screaming, and through the window, she only saw a majestic back. Levi's ignored the woman behind him, looked at the dying Hulk in his hand, and threw it aside. Immediately afterwards, he looked at the Hatred, and hooked his hand provocatively. Big man, let me see your power. His movements instantly attracted the attention of Hate. With a roar of Hatred, he grabbed the car beside him and threw it towards Levi's. The woman behind saw the car being smashed over, and she couldn't help screaming again, but she didn't scream. I saw Levi's take the initiative to pick up the car with one hand. This scene directly shocked the woman. What shocked her didn't stop there, only to see Levi's threw the vehicle back. Boom. Abomination didn't react at all and was smashed by the vehicle and flew out. Chapter 48 Violent Solution to Hatred. Finally shot. In S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, who is sitting in the office, can clearly see the scene through the connected surveillance video. Originally Nick Fury was not going to interfere in this matter, and even waited to see General Ross's joke. But who made General Ross call and promise a whole lot of goodies? It happened that Nick Fury and Professor X had formed a partnership some time ago, and he also wanted to see how strong Levi's really was, so he agreed to help. In the face of such a monster, can you easily defeat it? Nick Fury stared at Levi's on the screen with interest. At the same time, Abomination climbed up quickly after being smashed into the air by the car, and such an attack didn't do much for him. With a roar of Hatred, it rushed over like a violent mad cow, and all the vehicles along the way were knocked into the air. Seeing this, Levi stood there calmly, only reaching out to meet the Hated fist with one hand. The two fists, one big and one small, were in stark contrast, and no one thought he could block the huge amounts of fists of Hatred. Everyone who saw this scene even closed their eyes, for fear of seeing the bloody scene. Even the woman behind him couldn't bear to close his eyes. Boom! Exclamation mark. With a loud bang, the huge amounts of Hatred slammed directly into Levi's palm. The lower magnified ground was instantly torn apart, and the smoke and dust were everywhere. However, to everyone's shock, the tragic scene they imagined did not happen. The Hatred was like hitting a steel wall, and he actually bounced himself out, hitting the ground heavily. The strength is good, but the stronger the strength, the stronger the reflexes you suffer. I'm afraid you will be seriously injured this time. Levi's walked over to Abomination with a smile on his face. As he said, the hatred that fell to the ground couldn't get up for a while, and the right hand that threw the fist was directly shattered by the shock. However, such an injury is not fatal to Abomination, and it only takes a moment to recover. And at the moment, Nick Fury's eyes widened when he saw this scene. He couldn't believe that Levi's blocked a hateful punch with such an understatement. Even directly bounced the hatred back. Is this a reflection? It's really a powerful ability. It took Nick Fury a long time to exhale and calm down. For Levi's power, he finally had an intuitive understanding. This also makes him more concerned about forming a team with special abilities. In fact, this idea has already existed in Nick Fury's mind, but he has not found a suitable candidate. Now it seems that this Levi's is a good candidate. According to his investigation, Levi's was an orphan in the orphanage and was adopted by Professor X into the Mutant Academy more than half a year ago. And more than half a year ago, he was just an ordinary person who did not have the awakening mutant gene to gain super ability. His awakening ability was a month ago. In just 1 month, he went from an ordinary person to a level 4 mutant with multiple powerful super abilities, or even a level 5 mutant. This is just too scary. However, according to Nick Fury's investigation, Levi's is very low-key in school, and there is no hatred of human beings. He has little conflict with other mutants at school, and is a very gentle young man. A powerful mutant with controllable ability and mild personality. This is a very good opportunity for Nick Fury. However, although I hope that Levi's can join his Superman organization, it is hard to say whether Professor X is willing to let people go. Thinking of this, Nick Fury called Professor X. At the same time, Levi's slowly came to Abomination and looked at him with disdain. Is there only this level of so-called hatred? It's really disappointing. These words seemed to provoke hatred, and with a roar, he dragged his severely injured body to climb up from the deep pit. However, before the hatred came out, Levi's stomped him down. Lay down for me. He raised his foot high, performed the Victor operation with all his strength, and then stomped his foot on the hated head. Boom! Exclamation mark. This time, like a meteorite hitting the ground, the earth instantly cracked layer by layer. I saw that with Levi's as the center, all the tens of meters in radius had collapsed. Even the houses on both sides of the street have a tendency to collapse. This terrifying destructive power is truly shocking. Looking at the hatred in the deep pit, I saw that his entire head was directly smashed to pieces, and it seemed that he could no longer survive. With such a serious injury, no matter how strong the resilience of hatred is, it is useless. Seeing this, Levi's shrugged helplessly. This hatred is too weak. He still has a lot of super abilities that he hasn't used. For example, using flame control. Can you directly burn your hatred to ashes with a purple flame of 7,000 degrees? Or use absolute zero to freeze the Abomination into ice cubes that shatter when you hit it? Space reversal and atomic collapse are even more violent. No matter how strong the defense of hatred is, it is impossible to stop the attacks of these two super abilities. In short, if he wanted to kill the hatred, it wouldn't be too easy. Seeing that the hatred has been resolved, Levi's turned around and prepared to leave. As for the Hulk on the other side, he has recovered to become Dr. Banner, so don't bother. Chapter 49 Sign into Vibe Girl, S.H.I.E.L.D's invitation. However, at this moment, the woman in the house not far away suddenly shouted, "Hello." "Thank you." Levi's turned his head and looked in surprise, but found that the woman seemed to be familiar. "What's your name?" "Me? My name is Sky. Thank you for saving me." "Sky?" Levi's was stunned when he heard the name. "Isn't this the name of a Vibe girl? Could it be that the woman in front of you is Vibe's female Sky?" In order to prove whether the woman in front of him was a Vibe woman, he directly signed her in. Ding. Did the host check in with the Inhuman Sky? Sure enough. Seeing this system prompt, Levi's had already confirmed that the woman in front of him was Vibe's female Sky. No wonder he felt a little familiar just now. Sign me in. He was very curious what ability the Vibe woman would bring him. Ding. The sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Shock, with 100 experience points. You really got this ability. The corners of Levi's mouth curled slightly into a smile. The ability to shake can be regarded as the shaking fruit of Whitebeard in One Piece. It can shake the earth to form an earthquake, and it can also shake the sea water to form a tsunami. If the sky is shaken, even the space can be shattered. It is indeed a very terrifying ability. Definitely, maybe in some places also has an indescribable wonderful effect. In short, he got another powerful ability, which made him feel good. "Hey, you haven't told me your name yet?" Sky shouted anxiously when he saw him turn around and prepare to leave. "My name is Levi's." He turned back to Sky with a hearty smile, waved his hand and disappeared instantly. Levi's. Sky stared blankly at the place where Levi's disappeared, wondering what was in his mind. "Go back upstairs, Vice. You're not hurt?" Polaris asked concerned when he saw him coming back. "Don't worry, that monster is too far to hurt me." Levi's stretched his waist indifferently, and then said, "Let's go." This is the end of today's shopping. We should go back. Okay then. Although Polaris's interest in shopping has not diminished, the entire New York street has been affected by the fighting here, and most of the shops are probably closed. There's no point in going any further. But just as the two were about to leave, the door to the roof behind him suddenly opened. A panting middle-aged man ran up. Who Tilda, please wait a minute. Huh? Phil Coulson, agent. Although Levi's looked surprised, he actually knew that Phil Coulson was on the opposite roof. I just don't know what he wanted to do when he ran over in a hurry. Mr. Vice, it's great to see you still here. God knows how devastated Phil Coulson was when he received Nick Fury's job just now. After seeing Levi's resolve the abomination and disappear, he hurriedly ran over from another building. However, the elevator here seems to be going against him, and it is actually under maintenance. Unfortunately, he could only run up to the 30-story building on foot, and thanks to his being an agent, his physical fitness was not bad. Otherwise he would be exhausted. Fortunately for him, he finally caught up. Don't worry, you have something to talk about. Slowly. Levi saw that he was out of breath, for fear that he would burp. Phil Coulson took a deep breath and eased his breath. It's like this. Our director wants to chat with you, so I would like to invite you to our S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters to have a chat. Oh? Levi's was a little surprised. He didn't expect Nick Fury, the head of the Braised Egg, to see him. Don't know you have telepathy? Nick Fury doesn't seem to know, otherwise he wouldn't invite himself lightly. In fact, Levi's rarely uses telepathy to get other people's ideas. If he knows everything, it will be too boring and will be feared by people. So he doesn't use telepathy on anyone around him unless it's necessary. At the same time, he was also a little curious, not knowing what Nick Fury was talking to him about. Don't worry, this matter is also approved by Professor X. Phil Coulson saw that he didn't speak and had to pull out Professor X's name. Really? Well then, I'll go with you. Levi's nodded, actually wondering what Nick Fury was going to talk to him about. Soon, Phil Coulson called for a helicopter. Mr. Vice, please get on the plane. We'll go to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. Phil Coulson gestured respectfully. As expected of a 7th-level agent, every move makes people very comfortable. Levi's nodded in satisfaction and boarded the plane with Polaris. The plane took her off and quickly flew towards the sky. Chapter 50. The first time I saw you, the fake man. The director of the Braised Egg. Hidden in the sky is a huge amount of helicarrier. Levi's and Polaris were descending on the huge amounts of Sky Fortress in a helicopter arranged by Phil Coulson. Hey Tilda, it's really big here. Levi's looked around and exclaimed in admiration. This is the helicarrier of S.H.I.E.L.D. If it hadn't been used up today, he would definitely have checked in here. Maybe you will get some unexpected ability. The scenery is nice too. Polaris smiled and nodded. Above 10,000 meters in the sky, the clouds are only under the feet, and the scenery looks really good. Phil Coulson was not surprised that the two were surprised. It can be said that anyone who came up for the first time would have such a feeling. Welcome to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. Mr. Vice, please come with me. All right. Levi's shrugged and followed behind Phil Coulson with Polaris. The two were led by Phil Coulson to Nick Fury's office. Welcome to the heroes who saved New York. Nick Fury was very enthusiastic when he saw Levi's come in. Hello, Chief Braised Egg. Levi's greeted with a smile. Nick Fury couldn't help touching his bald head when he heard the name, then looked at Phil Coulson beside him in confusion, as if to say that he didn't remember having this nickname. Phil Coulson shrugged that he didn't know either. Sit down, Mr. Vice. Maybe you don't know me. My name is Nick Fury, and I'm the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury deliberately introduced himself. Levi's curled his lips when he heard the words. Okay, Director Nick Fury, now you can tell me why you came to me. Nick Fury stopped beating around the bush when he saw him being outspoken. Phil Coulson, get out first. Yes, Chief. Phil Coulson nodded and left the room. Seeing Phil Coulson leave, Nick Fury's eyes turned to Polaris next to him. Levi's definitely understood what he meant. Lorna, go out and wait for a while. Polaris frowned and looked at Nick Fury, then whispered, be careful. The office is so big, and Nick Fury can hear her clearly, which makes him a little embarrassed. Wait until after Polaris is out. Only Levi's and Nick Fury were left in the room. Nick Fury took the lead. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Vice. Because of those two monsters, several nearby streets seem to have been demolished, causing direct economic losses of billions, and hundreds of people die. If you didn't take action, I'm afraid the number of losses would be even greater, and maybe even the entire New York would be destroyed. Oh Tilda, and then? Levi's wasn't confused by what he said. You were supposed to be a hero and get a medal from above, but for some reason, we had to put this down, Nick Fury said with a serious face. Levi's folded his arms and didn't speak, but waited for the next. He knew it wasn't that simple. Seeing this, Nick Fury could only continue. I'm afraid you don't know the World Security Council, Mr. Vice. It's a worldwide organization. It's not the United Nations, but it has more power than the United Nations. Levi's is still somewhat impressed by the World Security Council. One of the duties of the World Security Council is to oversee the S.H.I.E.L.D., and all finances of the S.H.I.E.L.D. are also managed by the World Security Council. It can be said that the World Security Council is the lifeblood of S.H.I.E.L.D. So what? What does this have to do with me? Levi spread his hands. Nick Fury didn't answer, but opened the virtual interface, and a set of data appeared in front of him. This is the relevant information about Hulk and Abomination. It clearly states that General Ross's various testing data on Hulk and Abomination. For these data, they even used a lot of military weapons. But even with the missile bombardment, Hulk was only slightly injured and recovered quickly. It can be said that apart from nuclear bombs, human beings have no weapons that can harm Hulk, and even nuclear weapons may not be able to kill him. Having said that, Nick Fury looked at Levi's and found that he didn't have any unexpected expressions on his face. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Few people could be so calm. When they heard this, Nick Fury continued, "Mr. Vice, your strength is really shocking, and the hatred was born by injecting a lot of Hulk blood. Although I don't know how much power Hulk has in hatred, but from the situation on the scene, it is no weaker than Hulk. And Mr. Vice, you killed him easily. So the World Security Council fears my power? Even your S.H.I.E.L.D. Levi's took over. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. And join my Patreon if you want to support me, link is in the description. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.